I left my billionaire husband without warning. He collapsed instantly.
The morning air bit through my coat as I stood in the marble foyer of our Manhattan penthouse for the last time. December 19th, 7:15 a.m. My hands trembled as I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, the diamond catching the pale winter light one final time. Beside it, a folded note with words I had rehearsed in my mind for months. I'm tired of being an accessory to your empire. My baby deserves a mother who is whole, not a shadow of who she used to be. Don't look for me. 6 months pregnant, 1 small suitcase, and 4 years of my life reduced to a quiet exit through the service elevator. Marcus was in Aspen with her. He wouldn't know I was gone until tomorrow evening. By then, I would be someone he couldn't reach, couldn't control, couldn't break anymore. I stepped into the cold Manhattan morning and didn't look back. Before we dive in, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments which city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Now, let's continue. 4 years earlier, I was a 26-year-old architect with a small but growing reputation in Connecticut. I had just finished my master's degree, and my father, Richard Bennett, was my hero. He had built his real estate development company from nothing, teaching me that integrity was the foundation of any empire worth building. My mother had passed away when I was 19, and it was just my father, my older brother Jonathan, and me against the world. I met Marcus Whitfield at a charity gala in Hartford. He was 15 years older than me, impossibly handsome, with the kind of confidence that filled every room he entered. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, and when he looked at me across the crowded ballroom, I felt like the only woman in the world. He pursued me with the precision of a man who always got what he wanted. Flowers delivered to my tiny apartment every day for 2 weeks, dinner reservations at restaurants with months-long waiting lists, a helicopter ride over Manhattan just because I mentioned I had never seen the city from above. I was intoxicated. When I told my father about Marcus, his face went pale. He sat me down in his study, the room where he had taught me to read blueprints as a child, and told me the truth. "Layla, I know this man. I know him better than you think. 3 years ago, Marcus Whitfield destroyed a deal I had been building for 18 months, a waterfront development in Boston worth $40 million. He undercut me with bribes to city officials, leaked false information about my company's finances, and stole the contract from under me. I nearly lost everything. Your mother's medical bills had already drained our savings, and that deal was supposed to be our recovery. I spent 2 years climbing out of that hole, and I did it quietly because I didn't want you and Jonathan to worry." He leaned forward, his eyes heavy with a pain I had never seen before. But that's not all. Marcus Whitfield has a reputation in this industry. He collects women like he collects properties, beautiful women he can display at events and discard when he's bored. He has had at least 3 serious relationships I know of, and each one ended with the woman isolated from her family, financially dependent, and emotionally destroyed. Please, sweetheart, I am begging you, do not do this. I wish I could tell you I listened. I wish I could say my father's words broke through the fog of infatuation that had clouded my judgment, but Marcus had already planted seeds of doubt in my mind. He had mentioned casually that my father's company had struggled because of poor business decisions, that Richard Bennett was known in some circles as a man who couldn't compete with the big players, that perhaps my father was jealous of our relationship. I chose Marcus. I chose the fairy tale he was selling over the truth my father was offering. Within 6 months, I had moved into Marcus's penthouse on the Upper East Side. I stopped returning my father's calls. I let my architecture career fade into the background because Marcus said he wanted me by his side at events, at dinners, at galas. He said my talent was wasted on small projects when I could be designing our future together. What he meant was that my identity was inconvenient, my independence was a threat, my connection to my family was an obstacle. The first year was a slow erosion. I didn't notice the walls closing in because Marcus was so skilled at making the cage feel like a castle. He bought me designer clothes and told me what to wear. I remember standing in our walk-in closet, the size of my old apartment, surrounded by Chanel and Valentino and Oscar de la Renta, feeling like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. He hired staff for the penthouse and told me I didn't need to worry about mundane things like cooking or cleaning. Rosa, the housekeeper, would give me sympathetic looks when Marcus criticized my attempts to make dinner. Elena, the personal assistant, scheduled my days with spa appointments and charity lunches that left me feeling emptier than before. Marcus introduced me to his wealthy friends as his beautiful architect girlfriend, but whenever I tried to discuss actual architecture, he would steer the conversation elsewhere. At one dinner party in the Hamptons, I began explaining to a fellow guest my ideas about sustainable residential design. Marcus put his hand on my knee under the table, squeezing hard enough to leave a bruise, and interrupted with a charming laugh. Layla is adorable when she talks about her little hobby, but let's discuss something more interesting. Did you hear about the merger between Hartwell and Sinclair? The humiliation burned, but I smiled and stayed silent. And later, that night, Marcus told me I had embarrassed him by trying to sound intelligent about things I didn't understand. You're too smart to waste your time on blueprints, baby. Let me handle the business. You just focus on being happy. Focus on being beautiful. That's what you're good at. The words should have been a warning. Instead, I internalized them. Maybe he was right. Maybe my ambitions were just a hobby. Maybe my real value was in being Marcus Whitfield's partner, supporting his vision, amplifying his success. By the second year, I had closed my small architecture firm. I took occasional freelance projects, small residential designs that Marcus dismissed as hobbies. My income dwindled to almost nothing. My savings account, which I had built carefully since college, was absorbed into our shared expenses. Marcus controlled the credit cards, the bank accounts, the investments. He gave me an allowance for personal items, deposited monthly into an account he monitored. I told myself this was normal. I told myself wealthy couples operated this way. I told myself I was lucky. The third year brought the other women. I found the first evidence on his phone, a text message from someone named Bianca. Miss you already. Last night was incredible. I confronted Marcus, and he laughed. He actually laughed. Layla, sweetheart, you can't possibly be this naive. Men like me have needs. It doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I'm human. Would you rather I lie to you? I stayed. I stayed because I had nowhere to go. I had burned a bridge with my father. I had let my friendships wither. I had no career, no savings, no identity outside of being Marcus Whitfield's girlfriend. The golden cage had become my entire world, and I couldn't remember how to exist beyond its bars. Then I got pregnant. Marcus's reaction to my pregnancy told me everything I had been refusing to see for 3 years. We were having dinner at Les Bernardines, his favorite restaurant in the city, when I told him. I had practiced the words in the bathroom mirror that afternoon, my hand resting on my still flat stomach, imagining his face lighting up with joy. I pictured him reaching across the table to hold my hand, tears in his eyes, talking about nurseries and names and the family we would build together. I had convinced myself that a child would change everything, would soften his edges, would give him something to love that wasn't about power or status. Instead, his fork stopped halfway to his mouth, his jaw tightened, his eyes, which had been warm with wine and good food, went cold. That specific shade of cold I had learned to recognize as dangerous. Is it mine? The question hit me like a physical blow. The restaurant seemed to blur around me, other diners laughing, glasses clinking, the ambient noise of wealth and privilege. And my husband, the father of my child, asking if I had been unfaithful. Of course it's yours, Marcus. How could you even ask me that? I would never. He set down his fork with deliberate precision, aligning it perfectly with the edge of his plate, a control mechanism I had seen 100 times before. Well, this is unfortunate timing. I have the Tokyo expansion launching in March. The Dubai investors are coming in February.
The Peterson acquisition closes next month. I need you available for these events, Layla. I need you presentable, not bloated and hormonal. The word presentable hung in the air between us. presentable, as if pregnancy was an inconvenience to his social calendar rather than the creation of our child, as if the life growing inside me was an obstacle to his empire rather than a blessing. We'll discuss options when we get home. I knew what options meant. I saw it in the clinical way he assessed me across the table, like I was a piece of property that had suddenly depreciated in value. And something shifted inside me that night, a crack in the foundation of the denial I had built to survive. In the weeks that followed, Marcus made his position clear without ever saying the words directly. He scheduled appointments with doctors he knew. He left brochures on the kitchen counter. He mentioned casually how his associate's wife had terminated a pregnancy last year and how much happier they both were now. I refused, quietly at first, then firmly. This was the first time in 3 years I had said no to Marcus Whitfield, and he did not take it well. The control tightened like a noose. My allowance was reduced. My access to the car service was revoked. I needed to request permission to leave the penthouse, and my requests were often denied. Marcus started coming home later, smelling like perfume, making no effort to hide his affairs. He wanted me to know. He wanted me to understand that I was replaceable, that my value was conditional, that my defiance had consequences. But the pregnancy had awakened something in me that his cruelty couldn't extinguish. For the first time in years, I had someone to protect besides myself, someone innocent, someone who deserved better than the cage I had accepted as my home. I started paying attention, not just to Marcus, but to everything, the patterns of his schedule, the names of his associates, the files he left on his desk, the phone calls he took in the other room. I learned that his business wasn't just aggressive, but illegal. Bribes to officials, falsified documents, money laundering through shell companies. Marcus Whitfield's empire was built on a foundation of crimes that could send him to prison for decades. And I learned about Vanessa Cole.
She was 32, an architect like me, but one who had chosen a different path. She worked for one of Marcus's development companies, and their relationship was the industry's worst-kept secret. I saw them together at an event in November, her hand lingering on his arm, their whispered conversation too intimate for colleagues. I watched him look at her the way he used to look at me before I became inconvenient. That night, I lay in bed with my hand on my growing belly and made a decision. I was going to leave, but I was going to do it on my terms. The next 2 months were a masterclass in patience. I became the perfect partner again, agreeable and compliant, swallowing my rage every time Marcus dismissed me or humiliated me in front of his friends. Let him think he had won. Let him think I was broken. Let him believe his assessment of me was correct, that I was nothing more than a beautiful accessory without the intelligence or courage to leave. Behind his back, I was building my escape piece by piece. The small architecture projects I had been doing as hobbies became my salvation. I started reaching out to former clients through a secondary email account Marcus didn't know about, created on a library computer during one of my rare approved outings. I offered my services at reduced rates for quick turnaround projects, kitchen renovations in Connecticut, bathroom redesigns in Westchester, small residential additions in the suburbs. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would appear on Marcus's radar or be mentioned in the social circles he monitored. The money came in small amounts at first, $2,000 for designing a kitchen island layout, $1,500 for consultation on a master bathroom, $3,000 for a garage conversion. I opened a bank account in my maiden name at a small credit union in Brooklyn, depositing cash whenever I could slip away during approved shopping trips. The account grew slowly but steadily, $4,000, $6,000, $8,000. It wasn't much by Marcus's standards. It was a fortune by mine. It was freedom taking shape, one small deposit at a time. I contacted a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Okonkwo, whose name I found through a domestic violence resource center's website. She specialized in helping women leave controlling relationships, and she understood the delicate balance I was navigating.
We couldn't meet at her office because Marcus tracked my phone, so we met in coffee shops in neighborhoods he would never visit, in Queens and the Bronx and outer Brooklyn, places far from the glittering Manhattan world he inhabited. Patricia taught me how to protect myself legally. She explained the difference between divorce and annulment, the implications of our common law arrangement, since we had never formally married, the rights I had regarding my pregnancy and the child I would soon bear. She helped me gather copies of essential documents, one at a time, photographed with a disposable camera during moments when Marcus was traveling. My birth certificate, my social security card, medical records for my pregnancy checkups, screenshots of bank statements showing Marcus's pattern of financial control. She also introduced me to the concept of documenting abuse, not physical abuse because Marcus was too smart for that, but emotional and financial abuse, the way he controlled my access to money, the way he monitored my movements, the way he isolated me from family and friends, the way he diminished my professional identity until I no longer recognized myself. And then there was my brother Jonathan. It had been almost 3 years since we had spoken, and when I called him from a burner phone I had purchased with cash at a bodega in Harlem, I broke down crying before I could say a word. He didn't ask questions. He didn't say I told you so. He just listened as I poured out 4 years of pain, fear, and shame. Layla, he said when I finally stopped talking, Dad never stopped loving you. He never stopped hoping you would come home. He talks about you every day. He has a room ready for you. He has always had a room ready for you. I learned that my father had not only survived Marcus's betrayal, but had thrived. He had rebuilt his company, expanded into new markets, and was now more successful than ever. He had remarried 3 years ago, a kind woman named Margaret, who had helped him heal from my mother's death and from losing me. And he had done all of this quietly, without fanfare, without ever trying to use his success to reach out to me, because he wanted me to come back on my own terms, not because of his money. The shame I felt was overwhelming, but beneath the shame was something else. Hope.
Jonathan became my lifeline. He helped me coordinate with my father's attorney. He arranged for a car to be waiting for me on the morning I chose to leave. He promised me that whatever happened, I would not be alone. December arrived and Marcus announced his birthday celebration, a massive party at the penthouse on December 22nd, 300 guests, catering by the city's best chefs, a live band. The event would cement his status as one of Manhattan's most powerful men. The guest list included Vanessa Cole. When I saw her name on the seating chart, something inside me snapped. Not in the way Marcus probably expected, not in a way that would give him an excuse to call me hysterical or irrational. No, my rage crystallized into something colder and more dangerous: clarity. I confronted him in his study that evening. "Is Vanessa Cole your mistress?" Marcus looked up from his laptop with an expression of mild annoyance. "Don't be dramatic, Layla." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm asking a direct question. Is she your mistress?" He closed his laptop with a sigh, as if I were a child interrupting his important work. "What does it matter? You know how I operate. You've known for years. Why is this suddenly a problem?" "Because you're inviting her to your birthday party, in our home, while I'm carrying your child. You're going to stand next to me and pretend we're a happy couple while your mistress watches from across the room, and you expect me to smile and play along. I expect you to behave like the woman I chose to be with. If you can't handle that, perhaps we need to discuss our arrangement." Our arrangement. That's what 4 years had become, an arrangement. If she comes to that party, I will tell everyone who she really is. I will make a scene that your 300 guests will never forget. I will destroy this perfect image you've built. Marcus stood up slowly, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not remorse, not guilt, fear. I had never threatened his reputation before. I had never shown him that I had teeth. But then the fear was gone, replaced by contempt. "You won't do anything, Layla, because you have nothing. You have no money, no career, no family.
You have nowhere to go and no one who wants you. You're going to stand at that party and smile, because that's all you're good for anymore. That's the only value you have." He walked past me without another word. 3 days later, I was gone. December 19th, 7:15 a.m. I had been awake since 4 a.m., lying in the darkness, going over every detail of my plan. Marcus had left for Aspen the previous morning with Vanessa, telling me he had business meetings with investors. He wouldn't be back until the evening of the 20th. I waited until the housekeeper arrived at 6 a.m., then told her I wasn't feeling well and wanted to rest. She retreated to the kitchen, and I locked myself in the bedroom to pack. 1 suitcase, that's all I allowed myself. Clothes that were mine before Marcus, practical items for the pregnancy, the folder of documents Patricia had helped me gather,
the burner phone with Jonathan's number saved, the cash I had accumulated for my secret projects, nearly $8,000 in small bills. I left behind the designer dresses, the jewelry, the shoes that cost more than some people's rent. I left behind the woman Marcus had tried to create, the hollow, beautiful shell he could display at parties. At 7:10 a.m., I walked to the kitchen. My hands were steady as I removed my wedding ring, the 3-carat diamond that Marcus had presented to me like a trophy. I placed it on the marble counter. Beside it, I left the note I had written the night before. I'm tired of being an accessory to your empire. My baby deserves a mother who is whole, not a shadow of who she used to be. Don't look for me. The housekeeper was running the vacuum in the living room. She didn't see me slip out through the service entrance. Jonathan's car was waiting on the corner of 79th and Madison. I climbed into the back seat, my suitcase clutched against my chest, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might faint. Layla, Jonathan's voice was soft. You did it. I burst into tears. The drive to Connecticut took 2 hours. I spent most of it staring out the window, watching Manhattan disappear behind us, watching the cityscape give way to suburbs and then to the rolling hills of the countryside I had grown up in.
When we pulled into my father's driveway, I almost couldn't breathe. The house had changed. It was larger now, with a new wing added to the east side, beautiful landscaping, a warmth that radiated even from the exterior. But standing on the front porch, wrapped in a heavy coat against the December cold, was my father. He looked older, more gray in his hair, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 4 years ago. But when he saw me step out of the car, his face crumpled with an emotion I couldn't name, something between grief and joy and relief. He didn't say anything. He just walked toward me and wrapped his arms around me, careful of my pregnant belly, and held me while I sobbed into his shoulder. I'm sorry, I kept saying. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. He pulled back and cupped my face in his hands, wiping my tears with his thumbs. You're home, sweetheart. That's all that matters. You're home. Margaret met us at the door. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle presence, and she welcomed me as if I were her own daughter. She had prepared a room for me, a beautiful suite overlooking the gardens, with everything I might need for the remainder of my pregnancy. That first night, I slept for 14 hours. When I woke, it was to the smell of breakfast cooking and the sound of my father's voice downstairs. And for the first time in 4 years, I felt safe. Marcus returned to the penthouse on December 20th at 6 p.m., still buzzing from his trip with Vanessa. The ski slopes in Aspen had been perfect, the powder fresh from an overnight snowfall. The hotel suite had been luxurious, with a private hot tub overlooking the mountains. Vanessa had been everything I wasn't: exciting, ambitious, unburdened by pregnancy or expectations of fidelity. She laughed at his jokes, validated his opinions, and never once questioned his decisions. On the flight home, he had barely thought about me at all. He called out my name as he entered the foyer, dropping his Louis Vuitton luggage by the door. The apartment was silent, too silent. Usually, I would be waiting in the living room, ready to hear about his trip, ready to play the dutiful partner. The television would be on low, or music would be playing, or Rosa would be finishing the evening cleaning. But there was nothing, just the hum of the climate control system and the distant sound of traffic far below. Marcus found Rosa in the kitchen, looking nervous. Her eyes wouldn't meet his. "Where's Mrs. Whitfield?" "She left yesterday morning, sir. She said she wasn't feeling well and wanted to rest. I assumed she went to a doctor's appointment because of the baby, but she never came back. I tried calling her cell phone several times, but it went straight to voicemail. I didn't want to bother you on your trip, so I thought I would wait until you returned." Marcus felt the first prickle of unease. He strode through the apartment, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floors, checking the bedroom first. The bed was made, the pillows arranged perfectly. The bathroom was clean and empty. The closet door was open, and most of my clothes were still there, rows of designer dresses and shoes that cost more than some people's monthly rent. But something was wrong. Something was missing. He couldn't identify it at first. Then he realized. My comfortable clothes were gone. The yoga pants and cotton sweaters I wore when I wasn't playing the role of Marcus Whitfield's partner. The practical items. The real me. He found the note on the kitchen counter.
His hand trembled as he picked it up. The wedding ring glinted in the evening light, cold and accusatory against the white marble. He read my words once, twice, 3 times, as if repetition might change their meaning. I'm tired of being an accessory to your empire. My baby deserves a mother who is whole, not a shadow of who she used to be. Don't look for me. The ring clattered against the marble as it slipped from his fingers. The sound echoed through the empty apartment. For a long moment, Marcus just stood there, staring at the note, trying to process what was happening. His mind, usually so quick and calculating, seemed to have frozen. I had left. Not temporarily, not to make a point, not to punish him for his latest affair or his coldness about the pregnancy. I had planned this. I had prepared.
I had walked away from him without warning, without negotiation, without giving him a chance to talk me out of it or lock me down further. For 4 years, he had been so certain of my captivity. He had built the cage with such precision, removed every support, every escape route, every possibility of independence. He had told himself I was too weak, too dependent, too broken to survive without him. And I had proven him wrong. The panic hit him like a physical blow, unlike anything he had felt in decades of cutthroat business dealings. His chest tightened, his hands shook. He grabbed his phone and called me, straight to voicemail. The automated message didn't even play my voice, just a generic recording. He called again, voicemail. He called a 3rd time, a 4th, a 5th, each unanswered ring amplifying his desperation. He called the building's concierge, demanding to know if anyone had seen me leave. But the morning shift had changed hours ago, and the evening staff hadn't been there when I walked out with my single suitcase. He called my hairdresser, my personal trainer, the boutiques where I shopped. No one had heard from me. No one knew where I was. He called Vanessa. She's gone. Layla left. She took her things and she's gone, and I don't know where she is. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to find her. Vanessa's response was carefully modulated, a mix of performed concern and something else, something that sounded almost like satisfaction, almost like victory. Marcus, darling, breathe, just breathe. Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe the universe is telling you something. You've been unhappy for months, you've said so yourself. She's been nothing but a burden since she got pregnant. Maybe this is her giving you permission to move on, to be with someone who actually appreciates you. You don't understand. She left a note. She left her ring. This is planned. This is deliberate. She's been planning this for God knows how long. She outsmarted me. She actually outsmarted me. So let her go. You have the party in 2 days. You have 300 guests expecting to celebrate with you. The caterers are confirmed. The band is booked. The press is covering it. Don't let her ruin this for you. Don't give her that power.
But Marcus couldn't stop staring at the ring on the counter. It seemed to mock him. All these years, he had been so certain I had no options, no resources, no ability to survive without him. He had built my cage so carefully, stripped away every support system, every source of income, every relationship. And I had walked out anyway, on my own terms, with my dignity intact. In the hours that followed, Marcus spiraled. He called my old friends from architecture school, but none of them had heard from me in years. He called hospitals all over Manhattan and the surrounding boroughs, but no one matching my description had been admitted. He even called my father's company, disguising his voice as a potential investor, asking to speak with Richard Bennett. But the receptionist said Mr. Bennett was unavailable and would return his call, and of course he never could leave a real number. The birthday party happened as scheduled on December 22nd. The penthouse was transformed into a winter wonderland of white flowers, crystal chandeliers, and champagne towers. A 15-piece orchestra played in the corner. 300 of Manhattan's most influential people circulated through the rooms, admiring the views, sampling canapes prepared by a Michelin-starred chef, and congratulating Marcus on another successful year. Vanessa arrived in a stunning black Valentino dress, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her throat. She positioned herself as the gracious hostess, filling in for Marcus's mysteriously absent partner. When guests asked about me, she offered a rehearsed explanation with just the right amount of concern in her voice. Poor Layla had a difficult pregnancy complication and is on bed rest at a wellness retreat. Marcus insisted the party go on because he knew how much planning went into it. He's such a devoted partner, isn't he?
The guests nodded sympathetically and moved on to more interesting topics. Marcus worked the room like he had 1,000 times before. He shook hands with senators and CEOs. He accepted toasts from business partners who owed him favors. He posed for photographs with celebrities and socialites. His smile was perfect, his charm impeccable, his confidence seemingly unshaken. But inside, he was crumbling.
Every time he turned a corner, he expected to see me. Every time a woman with dark hair walked by, his heart stuttered. The penthouse that had been his kingdom now felt like a mausoleum, every room haunted by memories of the woman who had walked out without looking back. He found himself standing at the window at one point, staring out at the Manhattan skyline, a glass of expensive scotch untouched in his hand. Somewhere out there, I was sleeping peacefully for the first time in years. Somewhere out there, I was breathing freely. And here he was, surrounded by 300 people who envied him, feeling more alone than he had ever felt in his life. Vanessa appeared beside him, slipping her arm through his. "Smile, darling. People are watching. You're supposed to be celebrating." He turned to face the room again, rearranging his features into an expression of contentment. But the scotch tasted like ash, and the music sounded like noise, and every laugh that echoed through the penthouse seemed to mock him. When the last guest left at 2 a.m., Marcus sat in the dark living room, his tie loosened, his jacket discarded on the floor. Vanessa had offered to stay, but he had sent her home. He needed to be alone with the emptiness. The ring still sat on the kitchen counter where I had left it. He couldn't bring himself to move it, couldn't bring himself to put it in a drawer or lock it in the safe. It stayed there, glinting in the ambient light from the city below, a monument to his failure. And he was beginning to understand, with a clarity that cut him to the bone, exactly what he had lost. Not a possession, not an accessory, a person who had loved him once, before he had systematically destroyed that love through arrogance and cruelty and control. A person who had carried his child and dreamed of a family and believed in a future he never intended to give her. He had won every battle in their relationship, and in the end, he had lost the war. January came cold and quiet to Connecticut. I spent the first weeks simply existing, letting my father's house heal the wounds Marcus had inflicted. The room Margaret had prepared for me overlooked the snow-covered gardens, with French doors that led to a private balcony, where I would sit in the mornings, wrapped in blankets, watching cardinals hop through the bare branches of maple trees. I ate regular meals for the first time in years, without someone monitoring my portions or commenting on my weight. I slept through the night without startling awake to check if Marcus had come home, without lying rigid in the darkness waiting for his mood to shift. I took walks in the gardens with Margaret, who had a gift for comfortable silence, and who never pushed me to talk, but was always ready to listen when I needed to. My father treated me like spun glass those first weeks, as if I might shatter at any moment. He would hover in doorways, watching me with worried eyes, catching himself mid-sentence when he started to ask questions about what had happened. I knew he wanted the details. I knew part of him wanted to storm back to Manhattan and confront Marcus himself. But he held back, giving me space, letting me heal at my own pace. We had our first real conversation on New Year's Eve. Jonathan and his wife had taken the kids to a party, and Margaret had tactfully retired early, leaving my father and me alone in his study with cups of hot chocolate and a fire crackling in the hearth. I told him everything. 4 years of accumulated pain poured out of me like water from a broken dam. The isolation, the financial control, the affairs, the way Marcus had made me feel worthless and dependent and trapped, the pregnancy and his rejection, the months of secret planning, and the morning I finally walked away. My father listened without interrupting. When I finished, tears streaming down my face, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the space between our chairs and took my hand. "I failed you, Layla. I should have fought harder. I should have found a way to reach you. Instead, I let my pride get in the way. I told myself you needed to learn on your own, that I couldn't force you to see the truth. But I should have tried. I should have done more." "No, Dad. You told me the truth, and I didn't listen. That's not your fault. That's mine." He shook his head. "You were young. You were in love. And Marcus is very good at manipulation. Men like him have spent their whole lives learning how to make people see what they want them to see." You're not the first smart woman to be fooled by someone like him, and you won't be the last. What matters now is that you got out. What matters is that you're here. We talked until nearly midnight, rebuilding the bridge I had nearly destroyed. He told me about the years after I left, how he had channeled his pain into work, using the anger as fuel to rebuild his company stronger than before. How Margaret had helped him find joy again after losing both my mother and me in the span of a few years. How Jonathan had stepped up to become his true partner in the business, the son who had stayed when the daughter had run. He never once said, "I told you so." He never once made me feel ashamed for choosing Marcus over him. He simply welcomed me back and loved me unconditionally, the way I had loved my child before he was even born. My son came into the world on January 28th at 3:47 in the morning in a private room at Yale New Haven Hospital. My father was in the waiting room. Jonathan and his wife were there with flowers. Margaret had prepared the nursery at home with more care than I could have imagined. I named him Thomas, after my mother's father. When I held him for the first time, this tiny, perfect person who had given me the courage to escape, I understood what love truly meant. Not the conditional, transactional love Marcus had offered, not the desperate, diminishing love I had accepted in his place. Real love, the kind that asks nothing and gives everything. In the months that followed, I slowly rebuilt my life. I started working with my father's company, bringing my architecture background to his real estate developments. It turned out that 4 years as Marcus Whitfield's partner had taught me more about high-end property than I realized. I understood the aesthetics that wealthy buyers wanted. I understood the lifestyle they were purchasing. I could translate that understanding into designs that commanded premium prices. By spring, I had my own office in Bennett Development's headquarters. By summer, I was leading the design team for a major residential project in Greenwich. My father treated me as an equal, valuing my input, trusting my judgment, celebrating my successes. I was becoming myself again, not the naive young woman who had fallen for Marcus's charm,
Not the hollow shell he had tried to create. Someone new, someone stronger, someone who had walked through fire and emerged with wisdom instead of bitterness. It was in June, at a coffee shop in downtown Greenwich, that I met Ethan Parker. The cafe was called Bean and Leaf, a converted Victorian house with exposed brick walls and mismatched vintage furniture. I was waiting for a contractor who was running late, scrolling through emails on my phone, enjoying the rare pleasure of a morning to myself while Thomas napped at home with Margaret. A man approached my table, holding a steaming cup of coffee and wearing an expression of genuine curiosity rather than practiced charm. "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I recognize you. Aren't you the architect who designed the Morrison residence on Lake Avenue?" I looked up into warm brown eyes and an open, genuine smile. He was handsome in a quiet way, the opposite of Marcus's aggressive charisma. Late 30s, well-dressed but not ostentatiously so, in a navy blazer and well-fitted jeans. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he had been running his hands through it while working, and there was an ink stain on his cuff that he didn't seem to notice or care about. He had the kind of confidence that didn't need to dominate a room to make itself felt. "I am, Layla Bent, and you are?" "Ethan Parker. I'm the Morrisons' neighbor, well, one of their neighbors. My property is the one with the stone wall and the oak tree that's probably older than the country. I've been watching your work come together from my study window, and I have to say, it's extraordinary. The way you integrated the modern elements with the traditional architecture of the neighborhood, it's seamless. Most architects would have tried to make a statement. You made a home." Something in my chest loosened at his words. For 4 years, Marcus had dismissed my work as a hobby, as something beneath his notice. Here was a stranger, unsolicited, telling me that my talent was real and valuable. "Thank you, that means a lot. The Morrisons were very clear about wanting something that felt like it belonged, not something that screamed, 'Look at me,' from the street."
He laughed. "Well, mission accomplished. My sister visited last week and couldn't stop asking about the house. She wants to hire whoever designed it for her place in Boston." We talked for 20 minutes before I realized my contractor had arrived and was waiting awkwardly at the counter, checking his watch. I excused myself reluctantly, and Ethan asked if he could take me to dinner sometime. I heard myself saying yes before I could overthink it, before the voices of doubt and fear and past trauma could talk me out of it. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Stamford.
a family-owned place with red checker tablecloths and candles dripping wax onto empty Chianti bottles. Nothing like the Michelin star temples of gastronomy Marcus had favored. Everything like what I actually wanted. Ethan told me about his technology company, which focused on developing sustainable energy solutions for residential buildings, solar panel integration, geothermal systems, smart home efficiency. He had built it from scratch over 15 years, starting in his parents' garage with 2 college friends and a lot of caffeine. They had grown it into a company with 300 employees and contracts across the Northeast before he sold a majority stake to a larger firm last year. "I'm transitioning into a more advisory role now," he explained. "I spent 15 years building something, and I'm proud of what we accomplished, but I realized I was missing life in the process. I missed my sister's wedding because of a product launch. I missed my nephew's first steps because of an investor meeting. I don't want to be 80 years old with a lot of money and a lot of regret." He asked about my life, and I took a deep breath and told him the truth. All of it. Marcus, the years of control, the slow erosion of my identity, the escape, my son Thomas, my rebuilding. I expected him to make polite excuses and never call again. Instead, he listened with careful attention, asked thoughtful questions, and at the end of the evening said something I will never forget. "Layla, what you did took more courage than most people will ever need in their entire lives. You walked away from wealth and security because you valued yourself and your child more than comfort.
You rebuilt yourself from scratch while pregnant and then while raising an infant. You should be proud of yourself, and I would be honored to keep getting to know the woman you're becoming." We took things slowly. Ethan understood without my having to explain that trust was something I would need to rebuild one brick at a time. He met Thomas for the first time on our 4th date. I had been nervous about it for days, worried about introducing a new person into my son's life, worried about what it might mean if things didn't work out. But Ethan got down on the floor of my father's living room and played blocks with my 5-month-old son with the same focused attention he probably brought to board meetings. Thomas grabbed his finger and gurgled happily, and something in my heart clicked into place. Over the summer, Ethan became a regular presence in our lives. He came to Sunday dinners at my father's house and earned Richard's respect through honest conversation and genuine interest in the business. He didn't try to impress my father with his net worth or his accomplishments. He asked questions about real estate development, listened to the answers, and offered thoughtful observations from his own experience in the business world. My father pulled me aside after one of those dinners. "I like him, Layla. He's nothing like the other one. He looks at you like you're a person, not a prize." That simple observation meant more to me than any grand gesture could have. Ethan never tried to rush me. He never pressured me. He never made me feel like I owed him anything for his patience or his kindness. When I needed space, he gave it freely. When I needed reassurance, he provided it without being asked. When I told him I wasn't ready for certain things, he accepted my boundaries without question. For the first time in my life, I was with someone who saw me as a partner, not a possession. Someone who celebrated my successes instead of feeling threatened by them. Someone who held my hand during difficult moments instead of using those moments as leverage. By autumn, I knew I loved him. By winter, I knew I wanted to build a life with him. But I also knew that my healing wasn't complete, that there were still wounds Marcus had inflicted that hadn't fully closed. Ethan understood that too. He was willing to wait.
While I was rebuilding, Marcus was crumbling. Vanessa Cole had stayed with him through the winter, playing the role of supportive partner as he tried to maintain his image. But cracks were forming in his empire. Business associates who had once feared him began to distance themselves. Deals that should have been easy started falling apart. His reputation, carefully cultivated over decades, was slowly eroding. The final blow came in September. Bennett Development announced a bid for the most significant real estate contract in Manhattan in a decade, a waterfront development project worth over $200 million. The same type of project Marcus had stolen from my father 7 years earlier. Marcus saw the announcement and felt the universe laughing at him. Of course, Richard Bennett would resurface now, at this moment, competing for a prize Marcus needed desperately to stabilize his failing portfolio. He threw everything into winning the contract. Every connection, every favor, every dirty trick he had learned over 30 years in the business. He bribed city officials, just as he had done to my father all those years ago. He planted false stories about Bennett Development's financial stability.
He pressured subcontractors to refuse to work with my father. But this time, things were different. This time, someone was watching. The investigation began quietly. Federal agents, tipped off by a source within Marcus's own organization, started gathering evidence of his corruption. Bank records, email communications, testimony from former employees who had finally found the courage to speak. When the news broke in early October, it was devastating. Marcus Whitfield, one of Manhattan's most prominent real estate developers, arrested on charges of bribery, fraud, and money laundering. The headlines were everywhere. The photographs of him being led from his building in handcuffs played on every news channel. Vanessa disappeared the day before the arrest, having seen the writing on the wall weeks earlier. She had already transferred her assets, already lined up a new position with a competitor, already distanced herself from the sinking ship of Marcus's empire. I watched the news coverage from my father's study, Thomas playing on the carpet beside me. I expected to feel satisfaction, maybe even joy. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. This man who had controlled my life for 4 years, who had made me feel worthless and trapped and hopeless, was now just another headline, another cautionary tale about power and corruption. My father stood in the doorway, watching me watch the screen. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know. I thought I would feel vindicated, but mostly I just feel tired and grateful. Grateful that I got out, grateful that I found my way back to you, grateful for Thomas and for Ethan and for this second chance at life." Richard nodded slowly. "That's wisdom, sweetheart. Revenge is satisfying for a moment, but peace is satisfying forever." 2 weeks later, Marcus called me. I don't know how he got my number. I don't know what he expected to accomplish, but I answered, perhaps because I needed to close this chapter completely. "Layla," his voice was hoarse, broken. "Layla, please, I need to see you. I need to talk to you. You did this to me. You destroyed me." "I destroyed you?" "Marcus, you destroyed yourself. You've been destroying yourself for decades. I just stopped being part of it." "I loved you. I gave you everything. The penthouse, the clothes, the lifestyle. I made you somebody, and you threw it all away. You turned my own son against me." "Thomas doesn't know who you are, Marcus. He's never met you. You showed no interest in him when I was pregnant, and you've shown no interest since. He's not your son in any way that matters." "Layla, please, come back. We can fix this. We can be a family. I need you. I need you to come back." The desperation in his voice should have moved me. Once it would have. Once I would have believed that somewhere beneath the cruelty was a man capable of change. But I knew better now. Goodbye, Marcus. I hung up and never spoke to him again. 2 weeks later, Marcus called me, exactly 1 year after I had walked out of Marcus's penthouse with nothing but a suitcase and a desperate hope for freedom. We were at my father's house, the same house where I had learned to walk, where my mother had taught me to bake cookies, where I had come home broken and been made whole again. Thomas had been put to bed an hour earlier, exhausted from a day of playing with his cousins and unwrapping presents. The house smelled of pine and cinnamon, and snow was falling gently outside the windows. Ethan and I were sitting by the fire in the living room, a blanket wrapped around our shoulders, watching the flames dance. We had been talking quietly about nothing in particular, comfortable in the kind of silence that only comes from true intimacy. Then he turned to me with an expression I had never seen before. Nervous, hopeful, vulnerable. He got down on one knee and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple diamond ring, nothing ostentatious, nothing designed to impress or overwhelm, just a symbol of commitment from a man who had proven his love through patience and kindness and unwavering support. "Layla," he said, his voice steady but his eyes bright with emotion. "I know you've been through things that should have broken you, but instead of breaking, you bent toward the light. You found your way back to yourself. You created a beautiful life for you and Thomas. And somewhere along the way, you let me be part of that life. I don't want to replace what you lost or fix what was broken.
I want to build something new with you, something that's ours. Will you marry me? I said yes before he finished asking. I said yes through tears that blurred my vision. I said yes because for the first time in my life, the word felt like freedom rather than surrender. We were married the following spring in a small ceremony in my father's garden. The tulips were blooming, pink and yellow and white, and the air smelled like new beginnings. Jonathan was Ethan's best man. Margaret helped me choose my dress, a simple ivory gown that made me feel beautiful without costume. Thomas, now 15 months old, was carried down the aisle by his grandfather, giggling at all the attention, reaching for the flower petals that the ring bearer had scattered on the grass. 50 guests, no press coverage, no champagne towers or celebrity chefs, just the people who loved us, gathered to witness the start of something real.
It wasn't a fairy tale. I had learned to be suspicious of fairy tales, of stories where the prince saves the princess and they live happily ever after. Real life doesn't work that way. Real happiness isn't handed to you. It's built, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. But it was real. It was honest. It was built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine partnership, and the hard-won wisdom of two people who understood what they wanted and weren't afraid to claim it. Ethan adopted Thomas legally 6 months after our wedding, becoming his father in every sense of the word. They developed their own routines, their own inside jokes, their own special bond. Ethan taught Thomas to throw a baseball and ride a bike. He read him bedtime stories with different voices for each character. He sat up with him through fevers and nightmares and the ordinary crises of childhood. Watching them together, I often had to blink back tears. This was the family I had given up hoping for during those dark years in the golden cage. This was the love I had been convinced I didn't deserve. Marcus Whitfield was convicted on multiple federal charges and sentenced to 12 years in prison. His assets were seized, his reputation destroyed, his name synonymous with corruption and downfall. The last I heard, he was working in the prison library, a far cry from the penthouse where he had once held court over Manhattan's elite. He never reached out about Thomas, never requested visitation, never asked for photographs, never showed any interest in the child he had once seen as an inconvenience. Ethan is Thomas's father in every way that matters, and Marcus is just a story I will tell my son someday, when he's old enough to understand, about the importance of recognizing your own worth and having the courage to walk away from people who try to diminish it. I think about that morning sometimes. December 19th, 7:15 a.m. The moment I placed my wedding ring on the counter and walked away from everything I thought I couldn't live without. I think about the woman I was then. Terrified, pregnant, uncertain, carrying 4 years of accumulated damage like stones in my pockets. I think about the courage it took to open that door and step into the unknown.
And I think about the woman I am now, a successful architect, a loving mother, a happy wife, a daughter who has healed the wounds of estrangement with her father, someone who has learned that self-worth cannot be given to you by someone else. It has to be claimed, protected, fought for. Marcus believed he had taken everything from me, my career, my family, my independence, my identity. He believed I was too weak to survive without him, too damaged to rebuild, too broken to ever find happiness. He was wrong. The universe has a way of balancing its books, not always quickly, not always obviously, but eventually, inevitably. Marcus spent 30 years building an empire on deception and cruelty, and it crumbled around him in a matter of months. I spent 4 years being diminished and controlled, and I emerged stronger than I had ever been. Sometimes the people who try to destroy us end up giving us the greatest gift of all, the chance to discover who we really are. My name is Layla Bennett Parker. I am an architect, a mother, a wife, a daughter. I am a survivor of emotional abuse and financial control. I am living proof that it is never too late to choose yourself, to walk away from the cage, to start again. And if you are reading this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know there is a door. It might be hidden, it might be locked, it might feel impossible to reach, but it's there. And on the other side of it is your life, waiting for you to claim it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories. See you next time.